And now it is the show that everyone has been waiting all day for. It is the live rendition of TPL's daily show. We do have a ton to talk about apparently here, as one singular rumor dropped about James Harden. And James Harden says, like, if I had to go to Philly, I would, I guess. And everyone is now ready to mandate that this is going to happen. The trade is already done.
It already happened.
According to Twitter. We do have a couple of hosts tonight. I will be the main host, the facilitator. We have Justin in, I guess he's on my side, on my end. He is bottom right. We have Brian, who is the resident insider for the Sixers. He's also a health nut. He has more muscle in his one arm than I have in both my calves combined. He is on the bottom left in my screen. I get right there. There we go. And we have Rob Lange over here.
The voice of the people.
Voice of the people, Philly Madness. He is the one spitting truth about Jalen Hurts and Carson Wentz and the Eagle situation. He also chimes in about the Sixers from time to time. Guys, how are we doing tonight?
It's been an interesting day, man. It's been
a busy day.
Being a Philly sports fan, this has been an emotional roller coaster of a day.
Yep, for sure. And I it's funny. I know as soon as I get a notification that it's from like a tweet from Woj, whenever it's about something involving the words Philadelphia, Philly, Sixers, 76ers, the Sixers Twitter is at the blow up. Like I already know the reaction. And so as soon as I read like James Harden Sixers, I'm like, I don't have to look. I know what's going to be happening. I know what it's about. I know what the reaction is going to be. I was about 10 minutes late to reading the reaction to it on actual Sixers Twitter today, but everyone was talking about it. It was the blow up of the day. And obviously everyone cares. We're doing a podcast based on a rumor now. So let's get right into it. James Harden says he would not be opposed to being traded to Philadelphia to joining the Sixers. He, as we all know, has 2 years left on his contract. He declined a $103 million extension, making him the first player to make over $50 million per year. That's how much he wants to get out of Houston. He would rather make less than he would rather not take that money and leave than he would take that money and stay. Brian, and let's kick it off with you. Your thoughts on the idea of a James Harden trade?
If it involves Ben Simmons, I'm personally out. Listen, it's like it's so tempting. It really is. Like, for example, you trade Ben Simmons for James Harden. You're a better team, obviously. You're a better team this next season. But like the way I look at it, and you could blame Hinkie, you could blame the way that a lot of us have been brought up as recent Sixers fans, and we think long view. But like, you trade Ben Simmons, you watch him flourish. That's gonna hurt, man. You bring in James Harden, you don't like, you're a better team right now this second. But personally, I wouldn't touch it. And I think that I went through stages where I would do it. Then I went back and forth. I might change again, but as of this second, like I'm not touching Ben Simmons. I'm not touching Joel Embiid. I've been critical of Joel in the past, but I've never wanted to actually trade him. I just knew that he was so freaking good, and it's just, I just knew that there was so much more potential in him. But to answer your question, I think that there are ways of getting it done without adding Ben, but it just depends on how much leverage the Rockets lose.
Okay. Hand it off to Rob. Rob with the backwards, I presume, Sixers hat on.
I don't wear Eagles things anymore during the season. It's all
should I take this down?
No, keep that up this week, because he's going to show the Eagles how stupid it was to let him go too.
I tweeted about Jenkins, by the way, because Schwartz during his interview talked for damn near for like 5 minutes about Malcolm Jenkins during his interview this morning, and it was so funny to me.
It shows you the dysfunctional family that's there, but it's not a dysfunctional family with the 76ers finally. And that's the first positive. But I'm with Brian. If Ben Simmons, or even to a lesser extent Joel Embiid, it's a non-starter for me. First of all, you're talking about guys that are really just kind of hopefully getting into the prime of their career. James Harden is a great player. And on paper, they become better instantly. But first of all, he's getting up there. Okay, he's getting older. Secondly, I think I read today that he has an opt-out after this year, so you're not even guaranteed him past this year. And if that's the case, you're going to tell me that you're going to trade – like the people that are ready to just trade Ben Simmons are the same people that in week 2 of the NFL season wanted to get rid of Carson Wentz. It's the same fan base. It's the same mentality. And look, I love James Harden. I mean, he can light up a scoreboard. But I'm not mortgaging my future for a guy that we can't guarantee. There's no guarantee that it leads you to a championship. He hasn't proven to be that guy yet. But he's also not guaranteed to stay here past a year. And that to me would just be all of a sudden you'd be taking a step backwards after what I feel you've taken a couple steps forward this offseason.
Justin, let's hand it off to you.
It's so tough because kind of like Rob and kind of like Brian, you I guess more like Brian was what he was saying is at points I'm like, okay, short-term goals, James Harden makes you better. If he's not the best scorer in the league, he's second best. And just adding that onto a team that has such dominant defense and dominant inside play, adding a guy who can score as well as he can from the perimeter would just make this team insane. It would make the team so good. But I agree in the sense that giving up Ben Simmons for a guy who's 32 right now, or who's turning 32 this season, and who only has 2 years left on his contract, and Ben Simmons 24, and there's still so much upside to him. It's just like Ben Simmons scores 16 points per game, 8 rebounds, 8 assists, and he does not shoot the ball.
Okay.
Just think about that.
Okay. Now, here's where I am in the whole thing. Just evaluating it from like an objective perspective. There are very few players I would trade Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid for in the NBA, just because like the time frames of the fact that you have one's 24, others 27. Those are all kind of factors in there where just like I don't want to trade for somebody who is older than Joel, because if Joel goes down, then you've aged the stardom of your roster, and you've also put a shorter fuse on your clock. So I do have concerns there. I also have concerns like when Joel goes down, Ben has shown that he can hold things steady while he's out. Harden's obviously a walking playoff berth, but I don't know the level that this team would play without Joel there. With Harden. Having said that, it's James freaking Harden. And I mean, it puts you in it right now. They're like a 5 seed in the East. I'd say maybe a 4 seed. At everything goes right, they're a 3 seed. If you get James Harden, you are, I would say for sure, like a 1 or a 2 seed. Like you are right at the top. And I mean, think about the massive chaotic turnaround that would be from a season ago where they get eliminated in 4 games. Nothing fits right. People are ready to rebuild the roster essentially. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, we have now acquired James Harden. And it's, that's a pretty ridiculous turnaround. I would do the trade, I think. But I think there are a lot of ways that this has to go and this can go. I think a really good segue to that. And first, Brian Joey D says, Brian is alive. Brian is alive.
What's up, Joey?
Yammer McYambag says, I think that a trade for James Harden doesn't end up in a championship and ultimately handcuff the team future for a long time. If he doesn't bring a ring, what's the point? So I'll let you guys go first, but I have a take from my end. Brian?
You have a take?
I know.
Wow. My God.
Brian, go ahead.
Okay, so regarding Harden, do you want me to talk about, for example, what I think the trade should look like?
Yes.
Okay, so I tweeted something similar to it, but I think they would probably need to include more. I think that the trade would look something like Matisse Thybulle, obviously Tyrese Maxey. I think that there might be some sort of a rule that indicates when they can trade him by, because he's a rookie. I don't know if has he signed his contract yet?
I think it's like December 20. It's like December 26th.
Yeah, so like you would have to so basically what I would see happening in that case is like Harden and the guys involved in the trade would like sit out like if there's games that play before that. But if there's no games that play, then obviously you hop right in. But this year is so weird. But I think it would be Matisse Thybulle. I think it would be Tyrese Maxey. I think Tobias Harris would be involved in the trade. And I'll get into my opinion on that part because that contract with John Wall's contract would be absolutely ridiculously bad for the Rockets. But this is what I would do. So Maxey, Thybulle, Harris, you're going to have to include the 2021 first, 2022 pick swap, 2023 first, 2024 pick swap. You don't have your 25. You might have to include a 26 pick swap. You might have to send out a 27 pick. So
you don't have to worry about them trading away and selling picks because they won't have any left.
Exactly. You're gonna absolutely gut yourself. So in order, but then again, you have Simmons, Harden, and Embiid. That's what everybody wants. So you just really have to weigh the two. Do you want to continue doing what we're doing now? I'm cool with where we're at right now. Like you got to be patient. You got Daryl Morey. Like just let it cook. That's the way I'm thinking right now. But Harden, Embiid, Simmons, like it's tempting, man. Like you're looking at a potential like in 5 years, assuming Harden re-ups. I think he's under 2 right now, or 3, 2 or 3. Either way, assuming he re-ups, you're looking if you give them 5 years, you're looking at 2 or 3 titles, in my opinion, with that squad. I mean, think about it. I mean, wow. It's worth it. That's what we want, right? But you're absolutely taking a massive gamble on him staying long term with us or staying the guy that he is.
Right. Let's go over to Justin next.
So I think the point of getting him is getting for one, and we talked about this a little bit in the podcast before, but closer. He's a guy, if you give the ball in his hands, he's pretty much going to score. So a guy in late game, he's not afraid to take that shot. So that's also good. We don't really have that in anybody besides Joel. If you're just talking perimeter shooting, so I think that's a big point of it. I think honestly, Brian said it really well. Like it's your chances of getting into a championship and like winning the finals is exponentially better with him on the team. But do you want to give up a lot of the future assets that you've accrued in the past year or two? Do you want to give up Matisse Thybulle, the shining child of Philly right now for basketball? Do you want to give up Tyrese Maxey, who a lot of people are excited about and could have a lot of upside? So it's either you want to take a risk and you may get a reward a little bit faster, or you want to stick with what you're doing and you don't really know what's going to happen.
Okay. Rob.
Yeah, listen, to me, the biggest risk with going after James Harden is, does he stay for the long term? Because if he doesn't and you're giving all this up, well, then it's kind of like, do you really want to do that? I mean, look at how we're talking about the Phillies, who gave up Sixto Sanchez for JT Realmuto and now may let Realmuto walk, and we're going, what the hell were you thinking? Mm-hmm. So in that regard, I needed an assurance almost, which you're not going to get from James Harden. I mean, maybe you do, but I would need insurance. But I will say this. I am not one who believes in, you can't trade draft picks. You can't. The draft is a crapshoot in every single league. It just is. It's the same thing with minor leaguers and Major League Baseball. I don't need to hang on to all these guys if I'm in win now mode and I could go get a talent to help me get the win now mode. So I'm not going to be hypocritical here and say I really care too much about the picks. Yeah, when you talk about it like Brian does and you're talking 5 first-round picks being included, it does seem astronomical. But if you get that Harden, Simmons, Embiid thing going and you win 2 titles, it was beyond worth it. I mean, it really was. So if you could find a way to get him without giving up Simmons, I'm going to find it very hard to be angry at you for doing that. I got to be honest.
So here's where I am on the whole thing. I think if you're Houston, any conversation that starts with Tobias Harris and not Ben Simmons has got to be a non-starter. And I just think like Tillman Fertitta has already been embarrassed once by Daryl Morey this offseason. And he's not going to let him fleece him as well as leave. And I just don't think you're going to see a scenario where Fertitta can be convinced to just take on Tobias Harris, that mammoth contract, for a guy that's like a tier 2, tier 3 player in exchange for a guy that's a tier 1 player. So I just don't think that's in the realm of possibility. And I also think that like the Nets offer would be better than that. Any conversation with Tobias Harris, I think is probably better than the Nets offer is probably better than that. Another thing that I think goes over to Rob's point, if you do a trade for James Harden, and I think it's assumed you're going to have to include Ben Simmons in there. If you do that trade, you don't do it unless you also get like a contingency of the deal has to be, we'll get you out of Houston, James. We'll trade for you. We'll get you out of Houston. You'll get your wish. We'll get you close enough to Brooklyn where you can go visit your friends on the weekends. But you have to sign your extension up front and lock yourself in here for 5 years, because we're not taking that risk of you walking away. So you have to sign up front. I mean, keep in mind, as much as like you're acquiring a superstar talent, you're also honoring his request of getting him out of Houston. And you're getting him back in the scenario where he would be undeniably the number one guy. You're adding a one of the best bigs in the game. You're making his life a little easier. You're getting him back under the supervision of his former boss in Daryl Morey. You have to also take some pride yourself and say, this is what we need from you. We need to add an extension onto that to make it really worth our while and to ensure that our risk is minimized. Now, I think the package probably looks like Ben. I think ultimately to get it done, it's probably like Ben, 1 or 2 of Maxey, Thibault, and Milton. And I would think a plethora of picks, like whatever the Drew Holiday package is, multiply that by like 3 or 4. That's probably.
You really think they're gonna, if they give up Ben Simmons, that they're gonna have to give up like somebody like Tyrese or Tease? Like,
I mean, he's a top 6 player in the world, top 10 player in the world.
I know, but it's also one of those things where it's like he wants out of there. I feel like we have a little bit more leverage, especially if we're giving up a 24-year-old like star who has a really good chance at becoming a superstar. And I mean, like, think about where James Harden was in his game at the age of 24. Like, he wasn't exactly the player he is right now for how he is. You know what I mean? So I feel like if we have to, if we're giving up Ben Simmons and we have to give up Tyrese Maxey, Matisse Thybulle, and I would that's too big of an asking price for me.
So here's where my guess would be where it is. My guess is they've probably had preliminary conversations, because that's where those leaks come from. Mm-hmm. They probably had preliminary conversations. It's probably started out with the first offer is like Ben for Harden straight up, and Houston's probably like, we're gonna need more than that. And I think that's sort of where things are maybe like sputtering and like sitting in kind of limbo mode. Brian, what do you think of that idea? Like of that belief?
Like kind of what Justin said, like this is a leverage game right now. Like Houston's in a bad spot. Like they have a top 5 player in the world right now who doesn't want to play on their team. So first of all, you never get fair value for a superstar. It just doesn't happen. You never do. And second of all, you're not going to get fair value in a situation that they're in right now. He doesn't want to be there. So in order to capitalize on that, like if I'm Houston and I'm offered Ben Simmons, I take that and I run and I get out of this bad situation and I get a top 15 player. You could say Ben's you can argue that it's for another pod, but like you get a top 15 player who's 8 years younger, right? Yeah, 8 years younger, and you run and you have a franchise cornerstone now. And I mean, that's what you traded one, and you get one who's 22, 23, 20. I don't even remember how old he is anymore, but
Ben's 24
years old. So yeah,
he's 1 day younger than me.
So yeah, I mean, if I'm Houston, I take that and I run. But if I'm Philly, I don't offer that. I offer a farm. Yeah. I would do that offer that I brought up before, with Tobias and with Maxey with Thibault in the picks. I would do that because that big three is insane, and you're looking at 3 potential titles in the next 5 years, like I said.
And one thing with that I will say is that I really don't think that Morey has offered Ben Simmons, because I think any offer with Ben Simmons they probably would have already accepted, because like Brian's saying is if James Harden really doesn't want to be there, especially to the point where he's not even coming to training camp, like he's not even being cordial about it, he does not want to be there. So to me, if you're offered Ben Simmons at all I'm sure even if we send Ben Simmons over there, it wouldn't surprise me if we need to give up a pick, give up picks. But if you're offered Ben Simmons, I think you're taking that deal, because James Harden doesn't want to be there, and that if Ben Simmons is the best player you're going to get from the teams that he wants to go to, I would assume.
So here's where I disagree. I think Houston has said like we're okay getting uncomfortable here, and then I also think like the best player you can get out of this deal actually resides in Brooklyn, and it's Kyrie Irving. I think maybe if Houston really pushes it to the absolute limit, maybe the Nets say like fuck it, let's just like if they want Kyrie, they get Kyrie. We'll pair him up, like we'll pair Russell or we'll pair James up with Kevin Durant, and we should be just fine with that. But I think they're doing. I think one thing that might be helping any kind of recipient of a James Harden is the fact that like I think his activities and his actions over the last couple of days are actively diminishing his trade value, because it's becoming more and more of a headache by the day. And then as the stories leak out, people are gonna be like, well, this guy's that sort of a liability, kind of. I mean, like he's a great player, but like, can we trust him around our guys? Can we trust him to like set a good example? Is he going to be going to like Vegas nightclubs every other night that we're off? Is he going to come back and spread COVID into our gym? I mean, I think he's actively diminishing his trade value to some extent, and it's making life a lot harder for the Rockets. But I just don't see a world where they accept a trade that involves taking on one of the supposed albatrosses of the league.
And one thing I'll say with the diminished trade value and like the questions, is he good for our locker room and stuff like that? I feel like Daryl, out of anybody, would obviously understand if he is good for a team. And I think the only reason we are in these trade talks or even like rumors is because he knows that, and he does trust him. I think he really does trust James Harden. And I don't think Philly needs to worry about that if that's a concern in anyone's heads.
Right. Now, here's an idea that I think is really interesting. The idea of maybe going Zach LaVine, who's 25, instead of Harden, costs less, obviously. Mm-hmm. Maybe in a situation that is more conducive to selling at a little lower of a price, because Chicago doesn't really know what their direction is right now. I think this is maybe a more viable thing. And I don't know if Brian has heard this, but I mean, the sense that I get is that they have their eyes on some sort of big three that they're trying to put together here over the next season or whatever it might be. They're trying to find a way to add a third star without giving up Ben or Joel. That's sort of the noise that I've heard. I don't know if Brian has heard that as well, but I think a big thing here that we have to be cognizant of is the clutch factor here. Like Ben Simmons is not going to want to go, is not going to want to be in a role where he's off ball. That was the problem with Jimmy Butler. That was the main problem with him and Jimmy Butler coexisting, was that Ben didn't love the idea of getting shoved into a locker by the guy, on like a nightly basis with getting called out. And then also like being reduced to the dunker spot role. Brian, what do you think of that?
So basically, regarding Simmons and regarding that, I mean, you said the clutch factor, and you brought up something about, for example, the trade value. What did you say about? You said they want to find a third star, right? And you said, I was trying to think of the first thing you said. Yeah, so I think that they do. I really do. But I honestly think that Doc Rivers wants to see if Tobias Harris is that third star first. And I think they're going to see this thing through, unless Houston kind of caves on the demands that, if there are any trade negotiations currently going on right now, that when there's smoke, there's fire. I mean, these dudes, these GMs, they're contacting each other all the time. Think of like a fantasy football league that you're in. Like they're messaging each other. they're trying to get feelers out there. Like, think about it. Like,
Probably in the Discord chat that you talked about today.
Yeah, so I mean, like, they're in a Discord group just like us. They're talking about trade offers, so they're throwing stuff around. So I think that I honestly think that they want to see things through unless they cave on their demands. But regarding Ben Simmons and his role with the team, I do think that he's open, but I do think that he wants to be the point guard. I think that no matter what position you put him in, if you bring Harden in here, it's going to be really, really interesting to see where he's put. Because if you have Harden on the Sixers, personally, like, and this probably isn't the best way to utilize Ben. It's not the best way to utilize Ben, but I would put him in a like Clint Capella role, like a super Clint Capella role where he's playing center. It's not his strength. You obviously have, when I say center, you put him as like the backup center. When Joel's in, you have him at power forward. So he'd be rim running and Joel would be trailing a lot. Like, it's not like an ideal fit really, but you make it work if you have those three, in my opinion.
I think Zach LaVine is, and this might sound weird because obviously James Harden is one of the best players in the league, but I think Zach LaVine would actually end up being a better fit than James Harden, purely based, like, I mean, I think Zach LaVine can be one of those guys that's closing out a game for you.
Yep.
He's got a good shot. He can take it to the rim. He can do multiple things offensively. I think also that keeps Ben happy at that point guard role. Zach can stay out on the perimeter and has done it with Chicago with 3-pointers, and he can run in and cut and get offensive rebounds I think he fits a lot better. My question is Chicago willing to give up Zach LaVine, being that he is 25? Are they willing to give him up for anybody besides Ben Simmons?
So if I could jump in, I didn't even bring up Zach LaVine when I was talking before. Like, the Bulls have zero desire to move him. Like, I know that for a fact. Mm-hmm. But I mean, if you throw something at them, they're going to listen, obviously. And in my opinion, you have Danny Green's salary, you have Maxey, you have Thibault, one of those two, and you got a ton of picks that you could throw at him. I still don't think they do that because I think they see him as a cornerstone. But if you can get him here and pay less for him, like a good amount less for him, because in this Harden deal that we're talking about, you send Tobias away, so you keep Tobias in a sense. So you have Tobias, you have LaVine, you got Simmons, you got Embiid. I mean, LaVine could be your closer, like you said. I mean, he's a perfect fit if you're looking past Harden. And then the third fit would be, it's just so cliche at this point, but Buddy Hield. But the longer that this goes by and he's not on the Sixers, the less likely it feels, honestly. It's just
so with the Buddy Hield thing, would you rather have, like, do you want Buddy Hield still? Because there's a lot of people in the Sixers fan base that are saying, like, okay, well, we have Seth Curry, we have Danny Green, we have Korkmaz still, we have Matisse, like, we have all these wing players. Don't be laughing over there, Rob. We got a big Perky, man. Okay, listen, let me finish my point. My point is we have a lot of those 3-point shooters that can be around the perimeter. Do you think it's still advisable for the Sixers to go after a guy like that?
I just want to say this. In the NBA, as it is presently constructed in 2020, you can never have enough shooting on your roster. You can never have enough guys that can stroke a basketball. But as much as, hey, Furkan is the people's champ around here, but if you're asking me, do I want Buddy Hield over Furkan? Yes.
That's not what I'm asking. What I'm asking is, with the roster construction right now, obviously when you're going to get – if you were to go get Buddy Hield, you would need to give up Danny Green. You would need to give up – how would that contracting work out, Austin?
Yeah. So it would have to be Danny Green, which I don't know that he can be traded for like another month or so,
okay.
Whatever the rules are, because he just got traded and he got finalized today. I think Danny Green, I guess it would be like a pick and then like one of, I guess, Shaker Matisse. That'd have to make the money work.
You think Scott would maybe get thrown in there instead of Shaker Matisse?
Man, maybe for sure. And I think the asking price, like I think even though like Buddy Hield makes $24 million, he's just not in the tier that obviously James Harden, obviously Zach LaVine. So I think I think he can cost a lot less maybe to get than either of those guys would. But I just don't think that you need to use your assets on a guy as sort of like a one-way star in that sense.
Yeah.
In the same way that like Daryl Morey said, we want to save our bullets for something else, and that means like we're not in the business of making reckless trades right now. We don't have many assets to work with.
And one thing, if I could jump in real quick, one thing that I think is really underrated that I could see happening is like, what if you're 2, 3, 4 weeks into the season and Shake Milton's balling, like listen, like he might not, but what if he is? Like, what if Doc finds a way to have him balling, and he's like putting up like 18 points a game off the bench, 15 points a game, 12, whatever, and he's just efficient, and he's being held back, like he's got a roadblock of Simmons and Curry starting in front of him.
I don't think it'll be a roadblock. I think it's going to be one of those things where if he's playing that well, they're going to keep him down at that 6-man role, and then
or he's trade bait and you get a LaVine. That's what I'm saying. Like,
okay,
obviously,
Brian is always cooking up something in that head of his. He's always got something cooking
obviously, I want to keep Shake around because, like, he's like when we first started Philly front office at the time. I mean, he was the blue root guy, like him and Jackson. Freaking not Pierre. I almost said Pierre Jackson. I forgot his name, man.
Haywood Highsmith.
Haywood Highsmith was a little bit after him. It was
Norvell
people are probably listening right now and saying his name, but Jackson. He went to Notre Dame. Can't think of his first name. Demetrius. Yeah. So he was like the beginning of our coverage. Like Jason was in the trenches covering him at Blue Coats games. So it's like a sentimental thing, really. But if you have Shake Milton and Doc already believes in him. I mean, he dropped 40 on him. But like if you have Shake Milton and he's balling out for you, like he's a great 6th man, but you also have Maxey, you also have other guards that are viable options to be in that role, and that's a buyout candidate. I mean, you could get an Alec Burks in a buyout candidate, but like something like that. But like if you have Shake Milton that's cooking, and he's not. Harden is a great baby. and he's playing 18, 20 minutes, but he's good enough to play 30. I mean, you can dangle him. I'm telling you right now.
Wait, I get that. And I mean, I think what
Austin's smiling. Why are you smiling?
I just find this funny because like a guy's picture is James Harden and he's saying Harden is a color. It's obviously a very, very salty, upset Rock.
Yeah, I just want to know who in the NBA is not a crybaby anymore, because I don't think there's one guy that doesn't cry or flop or any of the other stuff.
Jahlil Okafor.
My God. Good job, baby. Talk about the one guy. I went to bat for that guy for about a year.
Oh my God.
I loved, and I'm a Carolina fan. So like watching him, and I was like, no, this guy, I'm telling you, and like screamed at people when they went Noel versus him, Noel, and I was like, I was a jackass. Like I would just rip people, and man, people still like to bring it up and tell me how much of an idiot I was.
I'm right. I was right there with you, man. I don't know if we followed one another at the time, but like I was absolutely wrong about him, and I make jokes every once in a while, like saying like he's still got it in him, but like I thought he was going to be so good. Like I grew up watching. I'm born in '88, so my first like basketball was '90s. So like in my mind, that big man, like you need that big man that can get in the post and score, and he could at will at Duke, right. And he really can in the NBA, but like you just don't win with that. You know what I mean?
And that's not the NBA anymore.
This is a Jahlil Okafor pod now. This is what happens when you bring me on the podcast.
Right. No more Jahlil.
It's funny that Copacabana brings us up because Brian Baker. No one really knows that Brian Baker is actually our CEO. And so like
I saw that. I was like,
so like the CEO, the CEO of TPL is literally just one of the audience. One of the audience.
He is also the one who coined "Voice of the People." And then I messed up. I tagged Brian Jacobs as the guy who coined it. And Brian would have called me out of it and told me, no, it's him that coined me as voice of the people. So there you go.
This is an interesting comment. Looks like a gay elf. I don't even know where to go with that.
I want to know how you know what that looks like, because I personally have not seen that at this point, and I'm curious where you come up with that visual. Unless
Rob Landry, the voice of the people, right there, chiming in with the sixth sense. I think what's happening here is we're getting infiltrated by Rockets fans, and they're very upset that they might have to just take Ben Simmons, who is still a very good player.
They're screwed, dude. They're screwed. If there's Rockets fans watching right now, I'd hate to be in your position, because like you got a top 5 player in the NBA who doesn't want to be on your team, and honestly, I would take Ben Simmons in a second if I were you. And I've heard so many of them say like, "Oh, we could get so much more." Like, listen, you're in a position where you have no leverage whatsoever, and imagine being a 69ers fan.
That's clever.
I
don't really even know how this works. Are you pulling them up, or do they automatically come up?
I pull them up.
Okay, so you're just doing.
I will say as well. I mean, I can't imagine if that's a Rockets fan talking right there, which I would assume it is. I couldn't imagine being a Rockets fan right now. Like, the fact that a guy who's a top 5 player in the league doesn't want to play for you resounds across the league. Like, that's something that people see.
And you just had to sell one really bad contract for another really bad contract. But I mean, where are you as an organization right now? You're falling apart. I mean, you're truly falling apart.
This is turning into this podcast is turning into what the Eagles podcasts are with the Browns right now.
Oh God, don't get me started.
76ers are Mr. Steelio GM.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I want to I love how imagine just like being a Rockets fan, and you're just like when they try to come at you, and they're just like, imagine being this fan. You just chime back like, imagine missing 26 straight threes in an NBA final game.
And they wanted Doc Rivers.
Yeah.
Put Matt McGinty's comment on there. Your centerpiece is process legend Christian Wood.
It's true.
That's amazing.
I am happy for Christian Wood, and I will. I will.
Got a bag.
Also, we do have some news from Woj. Not the news you want. NBA coaches are no longer required to wear a sports coat during games. Sources tell Zach Lowe, NBA, and me being Woj. Coaches must wear business attire. So Brian, no sleeveless tees. Coaches must also wear face masks during games. No track pants allowed. So basically, we're going to have a bunch of frat boys and golfers out there coaching our teams. Great.
Damn well.
Real quick, let's circle this back to the Harden talks, because I feel like we haven't talked about the title of this pod for a little bit. So, like, what exactly do you guys think that Harden, like, say Brooklyn does give them a really good offer, and for some reason he ends up getting to Brooklyn? What does that look like for the Sixers then? Are the Sixers screwed? Like in that case?
I'm very curious to see how James Harden and a Kyrie Irving coexist.
Yeah,
like Kevin Durant can coexist with anybody. I firmly believe. Like Kevin Durant is just a different type of guy. But Kyrie Irving and James Harden, I mean, look, it would be entertaining. I mean, it would be a soap opera. I feel like to watch that team. I don't look. You're adding James Harden, but I don't know. I just don't like me. Kyrie Irving to me is an anomaly. The guy is so talented, but there's just something about him where I feel like he becomes more of a negative on a roster than a positive. And I'm sure people are going to rip me for that, but I just mean he has just a cancer feel to him when he is around a basketball team. And he has done nothing to prove me wrong otherwise right now.
Yeah, and I don't think you'll get as much heat for that as you think, because honestly, if you truly sit down and think about it, just about every team that he's gone to is worse the next year. You think about it, he goes to the Celtics and they have a terrible season. Like, okay, by terrible, they made the playoffs, but He got injured. The next season, they fell back and the rankings like a ton for what they thought they were going to be. What people were saying, they were going to be like the first seed, weren't they? When he went in his second year, and then they fell back to like I think it was like the 5th or 6th seed. And then the next year they trade him and they're better. So I think part of that was more than just Kyrie. I think a lot of it was the young guys on that team wanted more of a role, and he wanted more of a role. I just don't think it worked out. But I hear what you're saying. He has been like not the player you really want on your team.
I don't know how they'd make that work. There's only one basketball. Like it would like Rob said. I mean, Durant can fit with either of them, but like Harden dribbles the ball, rightfully so. I mean, he can score wherever he wants to, but like that's what Kyrie does. So like, in my opinion, the only way to make that work would be to try to find a way to shuffle playing time so that make sure one's on there at all times. But like when they're out there together closing games, like it's going to be a lot of sitting around watching the other person dribble. I think I've heard other people say that as well, so that's nothing new. But like,
yeah,
you're taking away the overall usage and impact of another guy by sharing the usage with one another. So you got to pick and choose. I think that if Harden ends up in Brooklyn, I could really see Kyrie going out, but I don't.
To Houston, there's only one ball, and Houston has no one to score it.
Exactly, but if I'm Houston, I don't even want him. Like I don't want. Like what am I doing? Like I like you allegedly have Ben Simmons that you could potentially get. I don't think that the Sixers want to move Ben Simmons. I really don't. But like, I don't know, man. Like thinking about that makes me sick. Moving him and watching him grow somewhere else, and all of a sudden he starts hitting threes. Like, could you imagine? Like, it's just like think about all the scenarios of not having him on your team. And like Hinkie said on his little podcast that he did with Pablo Torre, like
also Pablo Torre, just a tremendous host.
You work so hard to get him. Like you went through so much crap to get him on your team. Like, come on, man. Like you get these guys, you have them. You get James Harden, you have James Harden, but for how long? And that's. And
I will say as well, Ben wants to be here. At least that's what he's portraying to the media. That's what he's portraying to the fan base. He keeps saying he wants to be here. He keeps saying he wants to play with Joel Embiid. And when you have guys of that caliber that want to be here, you don't want to trade them away and get rid of them, especially when they're 24 years old and still have upside. So,
and personally, I think you have a PR nightmare on your hands if you trade Ben Simmons at this point. When you not only Daryl Morey, what he said, but I mean, you think Sam Cassell has talked about it. Doc is just consistently bringing up Ben. I really do not see any way Ben's not here this season. I just don't see that as a remote possibility right now. I think Daryl Morey and Doc are telling you the truth. They came here to try and see if they can have Ben and Joel coexist and build a winner here. And I think they're going to at least give it a year before they even think about breaking that up.
So with that, if you think thinking that it's going to be at least a year until they think of splitting it up, say the Rockets don't take a package without they say the Rockets don't take a package without Simmons, and they end up saying, okay, well, since we don't want what the Sixers have, we go over to Brooklyn, and maybe they trade him Kyrie. Do you think there's any chance that James Harden stays the year as a Rocket, or do you think he's gone before the season starts?
I think he's gone before. I just don't think there's any kind of feasible way they can let him play a game. Like there's just no way. It's going to be hard. It's going to be awkward. Chemistry is going to be shit. You can't let him play a game.
So do you think then that there's a chance that there's another team in the mix that we don't know about? Obviously Brooklyn and the Sixers have been the top of the conversation because they have pieces that are able to be moved, but there's other contenders out there, and obviously they don't want him in the West. I would assume most people don't want a superstar they're going to trade away to be in the West. But do you think that there's another team right now in the East that Harden want to go to, and that they have the trade pieces to get him?
Yeah, I mean the only team that I like that keeps coming to my mind, another team, is Golden State, and I think I read something that said that they're not interested in him anymore. But like that's the kind of thing that you put out there when you're trying to get into the other GM's head. You're trying to get leverage. You know what I mean? Like the trade that would be. I mean, I think Clay not being there this year really kind of just puts a kibosh on that, really. But let's say he was still healthy, and you go into next year with Harden, Clay, and Steph. I mean, I don't think that they would move Draymond. I really don't, because they have the ability to move Wiggins. And do you want Wiggins there? That's the thing. You could move Wiggins. You can move Wiseman. You can move. I think they have all their picks still, right? Like they can move assets like that. But like if you're the Rockets, I mean, you're looking elsewhere. I wouldn't want that if I'm them.
And so then with the East, is there another team in the East besides the Sixers and the Nets that have
the Heat? The Heat, in my opinion.
Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo.
I think Bam, Hero, and picks. I mean, I think. But like you have to make the salaries work, and I don't.
You know what? I think I would do that. I think I would do that deal if I was Houston. I think I would do it. No questions asked. But I don't think Miami wants to trade Adebayo.
Well, Bam just signed a new contract. Is that effective this next year, or is that not hidden yet? Because that
I
would
think
matter.
I think it hasn't hit yet. It has not hit yet.
I don't think Iguodala is he still
also,
there?
if I can get this trash off the screen, Ben Simmons is trash and overrated. Says everyone with a bad basketball opinion out there.
Well, here's my I don't understand how people could say Ben is overrated anymore, because all the guy does is heavily criticize.
People don't talk shit about him. It's ridiculous.
I mean, you can't say a guy's overrated when most people, both nationally and locally, rip the guy excessively, and they totally don't pay attention to what he does on a basketball floor. Very few people could do at his size. Like, and I'm not saying that he's a superstar yet, because he's not. But to try and act like this guy's overrated is stupid. He's not overrated by anyone at this point.
And also, I do want to say as well, real quick, is that like, if you're being told, and this LeBron does not come out often and praise players to the point that he has praised Ben Simmons. There's no way LeBron's coming out and giving him as much praise as he does every single year, and he doesn't have what it takes. Like, just think about that in general. LeBron has been the best player in basketball for the past damn near how many years he's been in the league. It's just you can't give that argument anymore. You can't.
I want you guys to try to picture a scenario where you're not in anybody else's shoes. You're in your shoes. You're on a pickup court and you're playing with Ben Simmons. Like, just picture. I'm serious. Like, picture a 6'10", 6'11" dude running at his pace, with his athleticism, with his abilities. Like, the dude is generational. He can't shoot. He doesn't want to shoot. He can shoot, in my opinion, but he doesn't want to shoot. It's a mental block, whatever. I don't even want to talk about shooting with him. It's the most over talked about thing yet. There's a reason that we do talk about it, though, because he should really develop one. But
because Howard Eskin can't stop bringing it up. So.
But seriously, like, think about how unique of a player he is. Like, you can find a way. I believe in Doc Rivers that he'll find a way to make him work. And that's, I mean, going back to the title of this pod, whatever the title is, but like going back to the subject, which is James Harden, like, I can't move Ben Simmons for him. I can't do it, because he's, in my opinion, and when he's 27, 20 years old, you're in your prime. I mean, you reach your prime before then, but you're in your man bod prime. Like, when you're in 28, 29 years old, he's going to be a top 5 player, in my opinion. Like, he's going to be so good for so long.
There's a reason I wear sweatshirts all the time. You can't see you're there.
I've seen some videos of you draining threes.
You have.
How many misses did it take for you to get that one where you made it?
Listen, I don't miss. I'm not a misser. No.
Amy
Ramos says, breaking news, James Harden to the Celtics. Only reason I bring that up is because you imagine what Vin Fosh would do if that happened. If it finally comes true. I mean, Vin would have eternal rule over all of NBA Twitter. It would be over.
What would that take? I'm trying to think of, like,
well, they don't have anybody that's very good, so I don't know.
Like, you would have, they wouldn't trade Tatum. They would take Kemba, Jaylen Brown, and like,
probably their draft. They got that. What was the best shooter in the draft this year? Cassell, was it?
It was
that white dude that they drafted in the back end of the
Naismith.
Yeah.
Naismith.
Naismith. They got him before. Yeah. Harden and Tatum would be terrifying.
God, yeah.
I don't even want to talk about that.
I don't like that. I don't. I mean, you're taking like one guy that isn't an automatic bucket from like mid range and like 3-point territory, and a guy that it also has like those shooting stuff. Like if they both have a bad night, which is like not out of the realm of possibility. You're not going to win anything.
Yeah.
I don't think ball. I mean, again, when Harden. I mean, the Jimmy Butler thing with Minnesota was like bad, and put them in an untenable, unwinnable situation. This is like 65 times worse at this point. It's very public. He's gone to like extraordinary lengths to be out in public and like very clearly does not give a shit. And so this is worse for Houston. So I don't think that no matter the trade scenario, they're just not gonna like you're not gonna get Jason Tatum from Boston unless almost Ainge strikes again, and maybe you end up with like someone who's like, I don't know, like almost James Harden. So like I guess that's like anybody else that's like a third of the player. I guess it would be like Jaylen Brown, a pick or two, and then maybe Kemba. But I don't know how that works. My guess is that it wouldn't shock me if Houston like just tries to be like a fuck you to James and like ships him to some team that's like a low key bad team. Like wouldn't shock me if it was like Minnesota gets involved in the mix here. He ends up in like Minnesota for like D'Angelo.
Where are there no nightclubs? That's like think about it. Like send him to Utah for like Mike Conley's expiring.
I don't know if he goes to Utah though. Don't they let you have like 7 wives? He'll be out of his mind.
Oh my God.
Donovan Mitchell and Mike Conley.
There we go.
Oh man.
All
right, guys. Let's give some of our final thoughts on it. Like, ultimately do you think Philly goes for this trade? What do you think it's going to be? What do you think it's going to be?
Let me go first because I just yelled at me because I got to get over to Party on Broad in the next 5 minutes. That's why Dot's yelling at me in the comments right now. I don't think it's going to happen. I think, as Austin said, the minute that Woj drops a bomb and Harden's name's in there with the Sixers, you know what we're going to do here in this town. But I don't think this is the deal. Now, there is this guy out that covers the Golden State Warriors, is Jason Dumas. I don't know much about him. He seems to believe Morey's working on something else. I don't necessarily think that he's not because Daryl Morey is always working. So I'm intrigued by what that might be, but I don't think it's going to be James Harden. And with that, gentlemen, I say goodnight to you and head over to Party on Broad if you're watching us here when this show ends.
Like and subscribe, everybody. We have Everything Philly podcast. We put on even more than that as well. So like the video, subscribe, go follow Rob.
See you guys.
All right. So we have about 6 minutes left. Brian, let's kick it off with you. Do you think this trade happens?
No, I don't. But that's just me playing percentages. Like I still think that there's a chance that it happens, but like I think it's like probably something like 70-30 in my opinion. 70% say no, but 30% says yes. And I think the only way that it happens is if Houston folds and says that they would do it for Tobias, for Maxey, I hope that they don't have to move Maxey and Thibault, but maybe you could throw in Mike Scott and then all the picks that I mentioned before. But I just don't think that. I think that Houston's going to try to operate this and try to regain leverage. I could see Harden coming out and saying that everything's fine, but acting. I could see them trying to figure out a way to salvage something. But at the same time, I mean, there's just been so much smoke, and I think they're going to have to make a move. And if they do, obviously the Sixers have been discussed by Woj, by other people, And I know I'm just filibustering right now at this point, but I really I don't think it's going to happen. But if it does, I think that the Sixers are one of the teams that will definitely be involved.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a chance it happens. I really, it's hard to say definitively whether or not it's going to happen. I think it is very, very possible. I just, like you said, I think the only way it happens is if you're giving up somebody like if you're going the Tobias route, because I don't think we're trading Ben Simmons this year. But I do agree with what Brian said earlier in the podcast that if you're trading for him and you're giving up all of those picks, I think you need to have him signing a long-term extension or just an extension in general, because he is only under contract for the next 2 years, and we'd be giving up however many draft picks and Tyrese Maxey, Matisse Thybulle, Tobias Harris. So we're giving up a lot of future assets. I think we need to have him sign that extension if it's going to happen.
For sure. So we do have about 3 minutes left now, maybe 3 or 4 minutes. I would say so this is what I would say. If Harden is still by some miracle a Rocket next offseason, I think there's like a very good, if not favorable, chance that maybe that trade happens, because at least Daryl and Doc have given it a season with Ben. You just feel like it doesn't work. Then maybe that's a big move you consider then. But if it happens in the meantime, he gets traded elsewhere, my guess is it's probably going to be like Brooklyn or something like that, just because players ultimately usually get their wish. But Brian, let me ask you this: do you think there's a big trade in the works at some point this season, like for that third guy?
I was
Zach Levine.
So with the Sixers, you're asking?
Yes.
For the third guy? It depends on how the season starts, but let's say they start the season. I'm going to walk around the question and answer it for you. Let's say they start like 20 and I don't know when the trade deadline is, but 20 and like 15. Like it's like not looking good, but we see potential. I think you'll see something. But if we're rolling, I don't see them making a move this year. I could see the buyout market being a big stage for Daryl because he's got that MLE. But I think that if they do make a move, it's going to be for like that Levine or for that Buddy Hield type of player.
Okay. Awesome. Well,
guys, I want to say something real quick before we end it out. Guys, and there's about like 200 some people in here. Guys, we would really appreciate if you go subscribe, like the video. It really helps us out. None of it, we don't get paid for this stuff. We love talking sports. You want to see more? Everything Philly.
Well, you don't get paid yet.
True. Everything Philly. Come like us, subscribe. You'll see it all here, all year. So, yeah.
You got it.
All
right, fellas.
He is Brian. Use Brian Mike Jacobs. You can find him on Twitter there. Is that the right?
Yeah, at Brian
name?
Mike Jacobs.
Yeah, again, Brian Mike. He is at J_Persecity. I am at
Persecity. I'm just going to clear it out here.
I knew it was that.
Underscore
Persecity, and I knew it was that. And then me, NBA Krell. I cover the beat for the Sixers. Brian is our insider, and Justin is I think the terminology for now is going to be Blue Coats beat writer, beat reporter, and then social media manager for sure. As always, thank you for tuning in, everybody. We have Party on Broad coming up next. YouTube has turned into our own personal television network. Take care, everybody. Have a good night.
Later.
Peace.